it wasn't for 18 years before I decided to run for a lot of different reasons. And thanks to all of you, we came within one state, micro close. But this book tries to draw the lessons, acknowledge the mistakes, and most importantly, this is really what's important about it. This is why it's the antidote to what Bob Woodward lays out. This book describes how we accept and fight, many times unsuccessfully, more times successfully, to make our democracy work. And never have we needed to do that more than right now. We're in trouble. And I don't try to be a troublemonger or to be a, somebody who tries to scare people, but I'm telling you folks, and I write about this in the last chapter in the book. I mean, I wish I could find legal standing to bring a case against Donald Trump for the lives that will be lost and the property that will be damaged in the billions of dollars because of his decision on climate change. This is life and death. Our democracy matters that much. And what is happening in the sloppiness of the diplomacy that's going on with Kim Jong-un, the sloppiness of his reckless statements in Europe at a time where Europe is already weakened somewhat and matters to us more than ever since the end of World War II. I mean, these things matter enormously, and we got to fight for them. And we proved in the course of and I lay it out in this book, when I came back from the war, it was not an easy thing to stand up. People forget that today. When I stood up against Richard Nixon, there was a huge division in the country. And it was not a pathway to running for office or being involved in public life. It was a pathway to, and I was arrested for civil disobedience and demonstrating against the war. So it was divisive, and I certainly earned some enemies for a lifetime through that experience. And we saw some of them come to the forefront in 2004. That's what that was about. It wasn't about my record. It was about them being angry that I opposed the war and told the truth. And Ken Burns's movie has now helped reinforce that truth. But the point I'm making to you is that when Nixon was unleashing the FBI on people, when Nixon was engaged in prosecuting an enemies list, when Nixon was involved in cheating and lying and perverting subverting the Constitution, and when he was in the midst of attacking the Justice Department and firing the Attorney General, the special prosecutor, and then the acting Attorney General resigns, Elliot Richardson. I mean, this was a process of dissembling of the American government, and people were thinking about it that way. We were in the midst of the Southern strategy, the exploitation of people by virtue of race in full force. And all you have to do is listen to the Nixon tapes to hear the bigotry and the hate that came out, despicable. And then, of course, there were pipe bombs blowing up in buildings and people carrying guns and shooting people in the streets. And Detroit was lit on fire with riots, and Los Angeles and so forth. People forget this. And people wondered about American institutions. Guess what? We not only made it through it, we got stronger. And the nation came out of it brilliantly in the end. And we go through these crises. I think people forget how really strong the American people are. And we can get through this period, which is certainly the most dangerous moment for our country since all of that, and more dangerous in some ways, because Henry Kissinger and Nixon were not, they were smart in foreign policy. I mean, let's be honest about it, with the exception. I mean, they tried to get out of the war. They took too long. They could have, in the end, they wound up basically bombing, as John Negroponte said, and I quote him in the book, they had to bomb the North into accepting the concessions that we had made to the North Vietnamese. It was fundamentally a kind of surreptitious surrender in ways to get out of there. He knew we had to do that, thinking there'd be a longer, decent interval than there was.